Hello, everyone, and welcome to Stoked, the ultimate Star Trek online podcast. My name is Chris.
My name is Jeremy.
Hey there, Jeremy. You know what this is?
What?
Episode 36.
I know that's a lot of episodes.
Just
thinking about that the other day.
That is a lot of episodes, and this is a pretty big one. We've got a lot coming up. Season 1.2 is just nearly upon us, which includes accolade system updates.
Yep, it's also got the squad leader system you're really excited about.
I am. We'll talk about that. And then I'm going to throw some geek all over your face. I apologize up front. We got to talk about the new out-of-game chat system. It's actually a pretty cool technology.
And already enabled on Tribble, so you guys can check this out as soon as you watch this.
So we'll give you the update on that. And then last but not least, it's part of the Season 1-2 update.
Yeah.
But it's so big we decided to break it out into its own news story.
These are all the major healing changes that are coming that are also already have been on Tribble for a while and have been going through a few different mutations. Give you kind of an update on what they are. Because I'll be honest, we both read it like 3,000 or 4,000 times before we finally started to understand it.
Yeah, and I'm still a little hazy on it. So luckily you got a chance to play some of it.
Yeah,
so you're going to have
experience.
Yeah, so that'll help. And then we'll follow that up with math, and it's going to be shield math this time, right?
That's right.
Huh?
Oh, so, yeah.
All right. Okay. And then we'll finish off the episode with our new Tactical View segment, a look at the Rapier mission. And then also we should mention you just recently made a lower level character, so we're going to shoot some Tactical View episodes down there.
You know, we asked for a lot of feedback on what episodes you guys would like to see on Tactical View, and a huge portion of them are actually in the Klingon story arc side of things. So I had to make a Lieutenant Commander. Just hit Lieutenant Commander 2 the other day.
Oh, so it's a Klingon?
No, it's a Fed.
Oh,
it's
you
just
mean
in the Klingon story arc there.
Gotcha.
Because remember, Klingons don't have stories.
No. But maybe at some point we'll do a
Klingons.
Tactical View on some Klingon PvP tips or something like that.
Maybe.
Kind of depends what the peeps want. So keep those coming in. Stoked at JupiterBroadcasting.com. And when we get certain ones that we feel like are good to feature on the show, or we get enough of a certain mission, pretty sure you're going to see that in a Tactical View segment.
You sure will.
What do you say we jump into the Season 1.2 updates?
Let's do it. Now, everybody got this email, I think literally everybody. Like,
yeah, it was a weird one.
Servers across China shut down.
Hey, look, we're about to be fancy.
I know.
Check us out.
So Season 1.2 was announced. The big thing that they seem to be pushing and publicizing is the accolade system. They even put up a separate page on their website, all dedicated to the fancy that is the accolade system.
Well, and here's the interesting thing about that is I was looking over at the accolade system, and I honestly am probably a little more excited about the accolade system than I am about squad system.
Whoa.
Right?
Did they just totally switch your mind?
Well, here's why. And there's a couple of them. What they're doing with this accolade system that I like a lot more is it's not just about take 50 photon torpedoes up the butt, right? It's more about...
But that is something.
That is there. It is there. And that is something you can accomplish. Definitely something I can accomplish. But they're also, it's like little things that you need to kind of be on the watch for when you're doing a mission. That I particularly have an interest in.
Yes, the exploration ones are, I think... That's really the ones that are talking to me. Those are the ones that you actually have to seek out and destroy.
Well, sure, because it's like it's a particular thing that you have to go. It's not a scavenger hunt. But exactly.
Yeah.
It's something you have to go out and do. And so they've got a great site, like you mentioned, up over at StarTrekOnline.com, and they have an explanation of some of these.
It's just /accolades. You probably can find it without our show notes.
Probably. But if
put it there for you.
If you don't want to spell accolades, that's where you could find it. So you mentioned to me before the show this stand in the fire urn on Elias.
Now, yeah, I mean, that's just really dumb. But not many people are going to do it. I mean, you just go hop in a fire and you get an accolade for it?
I don't know. If I'm replaying, like if you're making an alt right now, and when I make my next alt, I'm going to keep an eye out for these.
It kind of plays into the gotta catch 'em all mentality. You
exactly.
know? It's very much
the collector.
a completist's fantasy.
It's a collector's mentality, but the thing is right now, looking over at this page at StarTrekOnline.com, the ones where you go out and get them, there's not a ton of them.
Well, I think those are just examples, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, because I'm a little worried about it becoming a little unmanageable. Like, there could be a point...
Like, if there's too many? No, I don't think that they can have too many.
No, I totally agree there. What we need is a good interface to be able to view which ones I've accomplished.
Yes, and sort them out. They don't have a good accolade interface yet. I'm hoping that will come in the near future.
And it's passable now. It's like how I kind of view the C-Store. Like the C-Store interface, probably really to keep growing a year from down the road. That's just going to become a massively long list unless you give me some sort of filtering.
Or even
I hate to use the Exchange as an example, but something kind of along those lines where you can kind of do some searching and some filtering. Hey, I'm about to go do these, or just show me all of the accolades that apply to me at Lieutenant Commander.
Right.
That would be really helpful.
Yeah, that would be.
I got to know what to shoot for, because I'll shoot for.
Although I like the fact that some of these exploration ones you won't know about until you get them. That they're just you get for being a goofball and hopping in a fireplace.
I
and all
do
of a
like
sudden
that. You know what? And actually, that's a really good point, because when playing on Tribble, I've been messing around and I've gotten an accolade all of a sudden. And that really is kind of a cool, unexpected feeling.
Let me tell you another story.
All right.
Settle in. It's story time, ladies and gentlemen. I was playing Champions Online. You might have heard of it. It's another cryptic.
I recall that.
And so I spent one day just flying around Millennium City doing nothing.
Checking it out because it was awesome.
Yeah. And there was, I stumbled across an accolade for flying to the top of all 5 or 6 of the giant buildings in the middle of Millennium City.
Of course you did.
And it was just, I flew to the next one and I landed to get a better view and bing, accolade.
That's pretty cool. And
that's cool. I like that.
And that really would only apply to guys like you who are just checking it out for the fun of it, right?
But let's get back to Stowe because this isn't coked.
That's right, coked. Sometimes I wish I was coked, but this is not coked. Should we talk about out-of-game chat or anything else in the 1.2 update you want to cover?
The squad system.
Oh, jeez.
See, this used to be a big thing for
I
you.
couldn't stop talking about squad system. Well, and it used to be called, what did they used to call it?
Sidekicking.
Sidekicking. That's what it's called in Champions. And the main thing I really like about, I guess they're now calling it the squad system or squad leader.
Squad leaders, yeah.
And it's really all about, and we've talked about more about this in the last episode. Go check out episode 35 if you want to.
Yeah, kind of give you a breakdown of what it is.
But what I really like about it is the ability to play with either someone who's a higher level than myself, so I'm not always stuck and out of the fun, or, this is particularly important for me, new people coming onto the game who are, I'm way, way, way beyond where they're at. I need to be able to play with them.
Let me tell you another time it applies.
Okay.
You recall in the Klingon levels when you're about a lieutenant commander, some of those, you fight Klingons for like 25 levels. It can get a little boring, especially if you're also doing PvP and fighting more Klingons.
And especially if you've been through it once or twice, or 3 times.
Yeah. So what if about Lieutenant Commander 7, you decide, I'm done with this. You know what? I've got friends that are Rear Admirals. I want to go kill some Romulans.
Do we know if it works in
else.
Special Task Force?
You can't get into Gamma Orionis at all because that is given, the access to that is given to you by a mission that you get at Rear Admiral 3.
That makes sense. And so you can't share that type of mission once you do a squad.
Right.
Now, so just to break it down super quick, the squad system essentially will promote you or demote you to another player's level. And then if you play a mission with them, you get equivalent experience.
Yeah, for the true level that you are. So like I went and took a Lieutenant 3 that I had just created into exploration content out in the Zenus Expanse, which is way off to the side of the Cardassian thing. It's basically the highest non-locked area in the game. This Rear Admiral 5 friend of mine took me out there and squatted me up, and I was doing exploration content at Rear Admiral 5. Now, because I was a Lieutenant 3, I only had like 2 abilities, and it was really boring. The only things that it affects...
That's true. It doesn't give you more abilities, yeah.
It gives you more hit points, more shields, and it allows your damage output to scale up to the baseline for the...
Basically, they take the math on those stats and bump them up or bump them down, depending. That's a neat system. And then also the XP, right?
Yeah, so I was still only getting 1 to 3 skill points per kill, even though I was killing Rear Admiral 5.
It's more about letting you get to that and have a little fun and play with people that are outside your range.
Yeah, I tested this for like 4 or 5 hours with that guy over there, both me bringing him down to my level and him bringing me up, and we tried to break the system a number of times, and I got to give him props for working out all the potential exploits. There's no way that you can use this to really power level or anything. It really is.
Wasn't that what was the reason it was held? Because this feature wasn't called this, but it was in the beta, and then they pushed it all the way till now. And I believe there was some sort of loophole where you could work the system, and they've closed that up now.
If there was, I didn't know about it. Okay, yeah.
I know somebody in Jupiter Force had mentioned it to me and all.
Oh, I did want to mention one more thing, that even though, I took him as a Rear Admiral 5 to that opening Lieutenant level 4 mission or whatever, he still raped the entire zone. Yeah. Because even though
he's got all these abilities and everything like that.
Exactly. And all of his bridge officers had 3 or 4 abilities each. Some of the captain specific abilities, if you get ranked down, they're still their potency doesn't seem to reduce as much.
Yeah, potency is always an issue with me. I'm very potent. And now moving on, we do have an out-of-game chat client. So now that you're going to be coordinating with all these people to do squad systems, you can chat without having to be in case. You can be back like, oh yeah, hey, Joe just signed it. Well, I'll get in now. And what I really like about the out-of-game chat system is the technology that Cryptic built it around. I don't usually geek out on these kinds of things on this show. I save that generally for the Linux Action Show. But the chat system uses a protocol called XMPP, which is an open source communications protocol.
Wow.
If you've used Google Wave or Google Talk, Google Wave uses XMPP to send the updates to everybody's screen as you're typing in real time, and then they use XMPP for Google Talk for the chat system. It's the Jabber protocol is another thing that's often called.
The Google Talk client, though, can't plug into this, though, just yet.
I don't think so, but you could use a client like Pigeon. That's what they use in their example. You could use a client like Pigeon, which worked with Google Talk, AOL Instant Messenger, and now the Cryptic Chat system. So you could have, or Digsby, or on the Mac, you could have ADM or Pigeon, and you could have any one of these chat clients, and you can be on all of your chat networks plus the in-game chat. And the other thing I wanted to say is because it is a standard, it's an open standard, it's XMPP, a beautiful protocol. If they worked on their fleet support, because right now you don't have like a dedicated fleet list, it's just your friends. So if you don't have all your fleet members as a friend or vice versa, you're not going to see them. If they did implement fleet groups, like automatically everybody just saw all their fleets online, I could really foresee a lot of cool things fleets could be doing. XMPP can be, there's a lot of plugins on the back end for things like PHPPB or vBulletin, which is what we use for our fleet site. So we could actually have, for private logins, we could say when Jeremy and Chris log in, automatically query the XMPP stream, pull back, and parse the details of who's logged in for Jupiter Force. And we could display it right there on our admin site when we log in. Because it's all just like data that we can feed into the system. It's really cool. So they got it. I know, right? Wouldn't you love to have that?
When are we going to do that?
I don't know. I don't know, and I think maybe that's why Cryptic went with XMPP. I'm impressed that they are kind of having an eye on the overall technology landscape outside of gaming, because there is some great ways we could integrate this as gamers and really kind of take the whole integration with fleets up a whole another notch.
And we have given Cryptic a hard time about the fact that their social tools in game are not entirely up to snuff.
Yeah, this would be, and specifically though when it comes to the fleet stuff.
Yes.
And this fleet stuff that I'm talking about isn't implemented in the chat client. All they have to do for this to happen though is just enable fleet groups. Like you automatically see all your fleet people. Or
like
we could do
retranslate fleet chat into a private channel that can be set up. Yeah.
And because another thing fleets could do if we wanted, and maybe people wouldn't want this, but if that data is always available through an XMPP interface, our server could sit there and just watch 24/7 what fleet members are online, and then we could give out like badges on our site for the most hardcore STO gamers and stuff. Like we could automate all this kind of stuff.
What?
We could give out, like we could have our own structure in-house, like fleet promotions could be based on that and all kinds of stuff.
So what you're saying is that
they just have to give us that one little bit, and then we can really run with the ball.
Really nerdy.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Yeah, there you have it. Do you want to talk about the health changes?
Yes. These are really...
The healing changes are just...
These have been a hot topic for probably 2, maybe 3 weeks now, all over the forums. However, I wanted to mention before we get into this that they're actually being pretty well received.
I was going to say, sometimes when they announce this kind of stuff, the forums light up with rage.
Yes.
And there's been some rage on this one, but it's been pretty tame.
They do include some nerfs. Some of the primary healing abilities that you and your buddies might have previously relied upon were reduced in power.
Can I just say this, though?
Namely, the engineering team and science team.
I was going to say they nerfed the engineering and science team. But Cryptic is kind of like their signature. You know, like how Captain Picard has the Picard maneuver, where he warps in, but before the light can catch up, he fires, and the person gets all distracted because apparently sensors work off light and not actual like metallic objects and stuff like that. Whatever.
Don't poo-poo on it.
Okay. So Cryptic does something similar. They do the Cryptic maneuver where they nerf something, but they change something else. So at the end, really, it all just kind of washes out. Some of this stuff, right?
When they do it right, it's pretty...
sure, they nerfed engineering team.
Yes.
But then Miracle Worker is like a miracle ability now.
But Miracle Worker is engineer captain only.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So
like a science captain gets their holographic fleet summon thing, and engineers get Miracle Worker.
That does suck for me being a science person. But understandable, as an engineer, I shouldn't be able to have, or as a science person, I shouldn't have unlimited engineer, not unlimited, but I shouldn't have like amazing engineer abilities. That's what the engineer should be for.
So good and bad, because it gives engineering captains these kind of extra tools so they can kind of define themselves. And I'm personally in the camp that I like well-defined roles in a game. It allows you to more strategically set up your combat and
Jeremy,
your groups
from
and
within the
everything
restrictions come creativity.
Exactly. However, on the other hand, if you're a science captain that likes to tank, you're not going to be invited to anymore.
That's true. And you take my science guy, I've got engineering team, science team, and then I've got massive shields. So I essentially can be the tank healer right now.
Right. And you usually run with high shield power and everything.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but now
I'm probably just going to be only the healer, and the engineer, who's going to have Miracle Team, is going to be able to take probably the biggest pound
and rotate shield frequency, which also got a slight buff.
So they're really stepping up the engineer's ability to tank.
Yes.
Interesting.
To quite some degree.
Well, I mean, that makes some sense, and as long as now you got a chance to play with these on Tribble.
Yes.
Tell me, what'd you think?
Well, okay, here's my general impressions. Everything seemed less powerful. Everything. Across the board. All of my heals, when I landed them on myself or a buddy, it was like, oh, that did something? But it felt like I was firing them almost twice as frequently. I went into Starbase 24 as a Rear Admiral 5, and as you know, they're level banded now, so everything in there was also my level. And an escort showed up. Okay. Just a random other player. Now, there's only 2 of us against... Like, how many Klingons are in there? 3 million? 8
20
million?
at a time, and every few minutes there's another 20.
we wiped them out.
Really?
Yes. I don't think I could have done it before these changes, and this is what I spent the entire...
Because you're able to fire them off so quickly?
Yeah, I spent the entire combat, basically. I'd pick one, auto-fire, and then I'd spend the entire time until that thing died, just firing off heal after heal after heal after heal of different abilities. I never had a spot during combat where I was just waiting for my cooldowns to refresh.
So he was managing all the weapons?
Yeah. Boy, was he ever.
Oh, okay.
I mean, he was quite a powerhouse.
Okay. So that's interesting. So it was almost exactly what we were just kind of theoretically talking about. The arrangement almost just fell naturally like that.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even a planned thing.
No. This is just a random player that showed up.
So you're digging the changes?
I am.
Okay.
I really am. I mean, like I said, they took...
But you also are kind of a glutton for punishment. If you can't heal as fast, you kind of like to make it a little harder on yourself.
I do, and that's one of the reasons that I'm not such a fan of healing in ground combat, because there are times where I'm just sitting there waiting for my cooldowns to refresh, not really doing anything.
Yeah. My chair just sank a little bit. I apologize. Oh, no. see how far I can go. Hi, guys. I'm down here now. What's next, Jeremy?
So a bunch of the new healing changes also applied to auxiliary power is now going to have an effect on more of these abilities.
Matters.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just thinking before this, I almost always ran with aux almost all the way down, and if I was going to do something that needed an aux energy allocation, I'd pop a battery, totally. Yeah. And now I think I might actually run a little bit higher in aux, which means the shields are going to be coming down, which could be a game changer.
Yeah. Actually, stay tuned for math, because I do mention that some in there.
That's perfect.
The difference between shield and aux and
how
you can apply. Yeah, let's go on.
Let's get mathed.
Well, it's that time. Time to give the people exactly what they want, and that is math. But not just any kind of math, shield math. It's a big discussion. It's a big topic. Staying alive. That's really what we're talking about. Sorry. So the first things I want to cover are the big 3. These are capacity, absorption, and regeneration. Now, absorption is a neat one because there's only one type of shield array in the game that actually makes use of this mechanic, and that is resilient shield arrays. Every resilient shield array in the game has a 5% absorption rate. To put it in another way, anybody fighting you while you're wearing a resilient shield is only going to be doing 95% of their potential total DPS. Sounds really cool, right? So again, the other 2 in addition to absorption are capacity and regeneration. Now, the neat thing about these is you can't usually have one really high with the other really high, so it's very easy to rank all 4 different shield types in a very linear fashion. Capacity on one side, regeneration on the other side. At the top end on capacity is the covariant shield type. On the regeneration side of it is the appropriately named regenerative shield arrays. And in the middle of those 2 are the resilience, which I mentioned earlier, and the standard shield arrays that are just called shield arrays. I'm going to go through each individual shield type, tell you why they excel, in which situations, why you would choose them, and why you would not. Got it? Okay! Regenerative shield arrays are best if you're running at a very high shield energy. Why? Because currently shield energy affects one thing and one thing only, and that is your regeneration. High shield energy will potentially double the amount of regeneration that you can get on a regenerative shield array that is already pretty darn high. Not high enough, unfortunately. You see, you will never be able to regenerate more damage than you are taking, unless you have the capability of forcing your enemies to not shoot at you for extended periods of time. See, this is where regenerative shields actually do excel, is burst combat. They can take just as much beating as any other type of shield, but then will bounce back even faster, but only if you're not being shot at constantly. In a sustained firefight, regenerative shields come in dead last. Now, moving up, the next is the resilient shields. These are the ones I talked about earlier that have the 5% damage negation. Neat. However, to balance out this advantage, they have both a lower regeneration than regenerative shields and a significantly lower cap than covariant shields. Now, going back to the idea of a sustained firefight, these resilient shields will actually allow you to survive slightly longer than regeneratives, but because they come with a significantly lower cap, they are actually less resilient, Maki quotes, than regular standard shield arrays, which come with a higher innate cap. That 5% difference in incoming damage is not sufficient to offset this very large difference in overall capacity between the two shield types, meaning that shield arrays are actually more resilient than resilient shield arrays. However, that's basically all that standard shield arrays have going for them. They're just very middle range. They're very average. Blah. But on the high end, we have the big daddy, the papa, the big cheese, the mother of all shield arrays, the covariant shields. Highest capacity, lowest regen. The fact that their regeneration rate on a covariant shield is so freaking low means that even if you pump your shield energy level all the way up to 100, you still will not see any difference in your overall performance. So, by using a covariant array, you gain the luxury of being able to set your shield energy at whatever the hell you want and use the rest of the energy for more important things like guns. Big guns! On the other hand, this is also a downside because by using a covariant shield array, even with your shield energy at 100%, your regeneration is so abysmal that you will have to be almost entirely reliant upon shield regeneration healing abilities or batteries to regenerate your actual shield levels. This means that even though you can stay in a firefight for much longer than anybody else could hope to, at the end of it, you just kind of gotta sit around waiting for your shields to come back. Now, I mentioned that this would tie into the new healing changes coming out on Tribble at this time, and this is where it actually gets a little bit complicated because the healing abilities themselves can benefit each different type of shielding array in a different manner. Specifically, abilities that reduce the amount of incoming damage by adding additional resistances are more beneficial to people using regenerative shield arrays. Now, this is because if you reduce the amount of incoming damage so that it is less than the amount of regeneration that the shield is doing, you are in essence doing 0 damage. Whereas if you use a resistant buff on a covariant shield, that shield is still getting damaged and will never regenerate enough to offset the damage. Therefore, you are still going to have to eventually use a healing ability on that shield. Conversely, big fat heals are obviously going to benefit somebody using a covariant more so than they would a regenerative, because if you heal more than they actually have, you're wasting energy. And one last thing to keep in mind, how this ties into the new healing abilities. If you yourself are using a covariant shield and are a healer, remember that allows you to take that shield energy down and pump it into Ox, enabling you to heal more effectively. So keep that in mind. And one final caveat before I let you go is the fact that some of this might be changing. There have been hints of a new system rolling out whereby shield energy will also play into both your total shield cap and your resistance level. But that change is only being kicked around. It's not official. I'm just going to ignore it. And I feel like I'm getting a little long-winded here, so I'm going to cut it off here. If you have any questions, comments, corrections that you wish to share with me, send them over to Jeremy at JupiterBroadcasting.com. And that wraps it up. You just got mathed.
On today's Tactical View, we're taking you back to Deep Space Nine for the mission Rapier. This is a captain-level mission given to you by our homie James Kurland at Deep Space Nine. You see, there's a distress call emanating from the wormhole, which matches the USS Rapier. The Rapier went missing more than 6 years ago while on routine patrol to the Gamma Quadrant. So set phasers to fun and prepare to take your ship into Bajor's celestial anus. Once you've rammed yourself in there deep, you'll run into a batch of Jem'Hadar ships, which you'll need to turn into space dust. Sensors are not able to detect the Rapier, so you'll have to scan 5 anomalies to locate the signal that will lead to the lost ship. They're these long... You'll know them once you see them. After the 5th anomaly, the Rapier will appear at the Gamma Quadrant side exit, surrounded by yet another squad of Jem'Hadar ships. More killing! Rawr! Now that space is safe, beam down to the Rapier with a few cans of whoop-ass in tow and lay some serious smackdown on a whole mess of Jem'Hadar troops. Man, there is a lot of them. What? Did they just grow these things yourself? Oh, right. The groups in the mess hall are so tightly packed that you or your mentally challenged foursome are likely going to pull the next group before you finish off the first batch. So come prepared for a pretty lengthy battle. After you've cleared this room of baddies, you can then hop around and untie the hostages that are chilling in here. Upon freeing them, They don't seem bothered by the 6-year-long trip. They just tell you to take the fight to the Vorta. You see, this Vorta, who apparently left his purple eyes on his other clone, has a security code for the bridge. Wait, so he's not on the bridge? He's just not on there safely locked behind a door or anything? He's just hanging out in this force field? A force field that has an off button on the outside? Serious facepalm moment. At least he's well guarded, right? Nah, these guys are pushovers. Don't be fooled. A couple well-placed groin shots, and they're down for the count. While the Vorta stands there quivering, begging for his life. They'll give you the codes, and off to the bridge you go. On the bridge, another group of Jem'Hadar troops. After you clear them, a couple more waves will beam in. Beat them up. Congratulations, you've rescued the USS Rapier. Or have you? Don't count your energy credits yet, homie. Now you have to escort the poor whittle-washed ship back to Federation space. Fight your way back through the Tunnel of Love and out into the open skies. But oh freaking no! The Jem'Hadar bastards are waiting for you here too. They're really nothing more than a few explosive speed bumps on the way to victory though, after which you have completed your mission. Hallelujah! Thank you, Jesus! Give me my skill points. That brings us to the end of this week's episode of Stoked, but we want to say thanks so much, everyone, for watching, and we want your feedback, comments, thoughts, etc. Head over to our forum at jupitercolony.com.
You can also reach us by email at STOked@jupiterbroadcasting.com.
Not bad.
And you guys have been sending in suggestions for the question that we had last week about user-generated content. We're going to be reading those next week, so tune in for that.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, we come out every Tuesday at jupiterbroadcasting.com, where you can find HD versions, iPod versions, YouTube versions, audio-only versions, all that good stuff, plus the show notes. So check that out, jupiterbroadcasting.com. And until next Tuesday, we'll see you then.